fantastic session. So, workshop wrap-up. What does all this mean? So, in brief, what we've heard over the last day and a half is an expose of a variety of computational methods and what feeds into it and what comes after it. So we saw a nice showcase of some methods that, computational methods that looked at diagnostic intent. We saw a couple of presentations of computational methods that showed that they can do more effective treatment selection. I presented some of that algorithmic. We saw some heuristics showing that they can, that a computational method can pick a safer treatment regimen. And we also saw some computational methods from a couple of speakers that the computer could help in resulting in higher value care. And so the methods were sprinkled throughout the different sessions. In the overview, the key takeaways seem to be there is an insistence that the computational technologies that interpret patient data, that those computational technologies interact with the FDA. There's an insistence upon that, and that they also test for clinical utility. Secondly, there was a message or a theme of integration of the technologies and data sets, both for purposes of validating, but also to look for opportunities for synergy across the different technologies. And there's also a call in this overview to train medical trainees to be able to read the omics data in order to properly vet and validate the computer software that they're using. In the challenges session, there were many that were laid out. The speakers did a great job of finding all of the pitfalls that we need to watch out for. There was, again, a call for well-designed prospective trials. There was a call, again, for for appropriate training of the software. There's also face validity came up a few times, where we need to know how the computers are and how the code is coming up with the recommendations or the diagnoses. And we need to do that not only to understand it and to validate it as biologists and as physicians, but also on a practical standpoint, when we go to acquire the drugs, we need to be able to talk to the payers about what the logic was in coming to the recommendation. Again, a call for monitoring ongoing performance. Kind of like that. If I have to do board recertification, then the computer should as well. There was a computational a question of whether the computational methods can handle the heterogeneity within cancer. So as oncologists, we know that when we treat an oncology patient, it's not just one cancer, it's many within one patient. And so although currently a lot of the algorithms and the code seems to be approaching cancer as a block, we know it's not. And so will there be an evolution where computers can actually take on the heterogeneity that we're handling in the clinic? There's also criticisms of the data being too much homogeneity. And also the difficulties with communication were very nicely laid out, having to do with our general public's low literacy, low numeracy, as well as the probabilistic nature of what we're trying to communicate in itself. The data session, in sum, called for a creation of standards. It also pointed to the power of sharing data among institutions. As difficult as sharing might be, as mentioned in the last session, there was great power in that. And so there was a call for that. And then we're all scared by the data laws that are changing. Thank you very much to that speaker for talking about how it's getting more complex and fragmented, and there will be a need to change our informed consent processes, especially in context to the computational apps that our patients are interacting with. On methods, in sum, there is statistical methods, there's algorithmic methods, and there's heuristic methods. If I had to lump them together, and I'm very much of a lumper, not a splitter. it's interesting that the methods session pointed to the data people and the data people pointed to the methods people. So there's again a call for high quality data. I was surprised that most people, most of the speakers in the discussion were okay with disclosing the exact code and that it should be available. In light of the comment made in this last session about venture capitalism and proprietary nature of developing this technology, that kind of goes counter to have a public transparency about what the code looks like. And then there was also a very good discussion about what reproducibility means and the insistence that we have reproducibility measured by someone. I think naturally it would be the FDA, but there was no pointed finger on that, just that it needs to be done in assessing reproducibility. And the FDA presented how they are investigating this risk-based approach and determining the regulatory pathway. In the fifth session that happened this morning, the theme seemed to be that there needs to be an accessible expert. And in the places that are exemplars for precision oncology and computers and medicine, like Vanderbilt and Moffitt, they have the local experts. The accessible expert of the future could be by telehealth or telemedicine. And it seemed like when in places like in Intermountain Health, where you've got a molecular tumor board, they were assisting the physicians. So even if you have local expertise, there's still a board that could help facilitate those treating physicians. There's also a need for institution leadership. That also is a key theme in the centers that are doing this with expertise. And there's also this concept that the technology can ride on EHR and doesn't need to be in EHR. And then finally, the message was the FDA process was unclear, followed by the FDA process is clear. So whether this is true or the extent of its truth, it might be a matter of perception. And that might actually be the point in this last session, is that the perception is that the clarity could be improved. And that we've seen the definite framework, but whether it's known among the software coders and the physicians developing this, it may not be known well. So there's also, again, a call for need for ongoing monitor of the software. So just because you've released your software, again, does not mean it's locked down. We need to reevaluate the software as we do our oncologists. And then I like that we need methods to assay methods. It's very existential. It gets to, and very meta. This came up in another session as well, but it was really reinforced in this last roundtable session. Again, prospective clinical trials, and then the point made by that can we not only focus on the after cancer diagnosis, but could we actually use this technology for good in diagnosing early, where we have a better chance of cure, and then even better, could we use this coding technology to help people prevent from getting cancer in the first place? And so the gray box, which is what every workshop hopes to create. Here's the draft gray box that I'm going to submit to our writing committee after this meeting. I can see the gray box being potentially broken down into three domains: data, methods, and clinical. And these bullet points are the ones that seem to be bubbling up across the different sessions today. So finally, I want to give a big thank you to the NCPF and the National Academy of Medicine for believing in the topic and doing this as a part 2 series. I want to thank the planning committee for volunteering their time and their expertise in making connections to the great speakers. Thanks to the moderators for keeping us on track. This has gone very well today and yesterday. Thanks to the speakers for volunteering your time and being willing to share your expertise. You've done a great job. To the audience for coming to the microphone and asking provocative questions, especially in that last session. And then also to the National Academy of Medicine staff, you do a great job as usual, and you did a great job today. Thank you very much. And then one last announcement, if I could plug the next workshop, which will be in February, and this is going to be developing and sustaining the effective and resilient oncology care force. So that'll be mid-February, and it'll probably be in this room as well. And we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you.